Hey everyone, this is Dave here, back with a final look at Battlefield 1. This time we've got all three formats to compare, PlayStation 4, Xbox One and the PC. So let's get straight into it and kick things off with a look at the console releases. As we've already seen in previous videos, both consoles operate using a dynamic resolution. So with regards to PlayStation 4, we're generally looking at around 1000p, with this dropping down to 900p in more demanding areas, where there are plenty in the way of alpha effects and physics-based destruction. Meanwhile, the Xbox One version generally operates at 900p before dropping down to 720p in demanding scenes. That said, there are actually times when the Xbox One can actually match the PlayStation 4's 1000p resolution, usually when there's very little going on. For example, if we're aiming outside of detailed scenery or perhaps looking at a wall, and it's in these moments where image quality on Xbox One is on par with PlayStation 4, but outside of that, generally Sony's platform takes the lead here. Besides image quality comparisons, both versions actually match up quite closely in other areas. For example, the artwork and effects appear to be identical, with both consoles handling the same level of destruction, texture quality and alpha effects across the board. That said, there is one area where Xbox One takes point, and that's with regards to streaming. During some of the in-engine real-time cutscenes, we actually see higher quality textures appear more quickly on Xbox One, whereas on PlayStation 4 sometimes ground details can appear a little blurrier. Beyond that though, both versions appear to operate using the same level of graphical quality, which appears to be a close match for the PC version running using medium settings, although consoles do borrow a few effects from the low and high presets, essentially with these elements being customized by DICE on a scene-to-scene basis. As we've seen with previous Frostbite engine games, Battlefield 1 is designed specifically around targeting 60 frames per second, with the engine optimized to hit that particular frame rate. Now both consoles actually do a really good job here, and general combat plays out very smoothly with only a few dips here and there, nothing particularly intrusive. That said, when the action heats up, we do see more significant drops in performance, which takes metrics down to the low 50s or high 40s. A lot of the time both consoles are affected in a similar manner, particularly when there's lots of explosions, say blowing up buildings with a tank, or lots of particle effects on screen. It's not a major problem, but it does mean the experience isn't always silky smooth, and when the engine is pushed to its limits, we actually see the Xbox One carve out a noticeable lead here. Yep, that's right, performance actually gets hit harder on PlayStation 4. In some cases we actually see drops in frame rate, whereas on Xbox One these scenes are running at a mostly solid 60 FPS. Overall then, in terms of the campaign, the Xbox One definitely has an advantage. The experience is slightly smoother on Microsoft's platform, and there are definitely less of those more noticeable frame rate drops. That said, there are plenty of times when both consoles hit a solid 60 FPS, and the experience is generally very playable on both. That's a look at the campaign, but really where a lot of people's attention is going to be focused is the game's multiplayer mode, and once again Battlefield provides an absolutely awesome online experience. Here we're looking at the operations mode, which essentially gives us a huge map supporting 64 players, complete with various vehicles and the ability to destroy scenery. It's an absolute riot, and it definitely gives the engine a good stress test. Here's the PlayStation 4 version. So like the campaign, we are seeing DICE target 60 frames per second, but performance often falls short here. Simply running around the environment outside of combat can see frame rates drop down into the mid 30s, particularly when there's quite a lot of alpha effects on screen such as rain, particles, and of course when there are long draw distances on show, which is a frequent occurrence in this particular game. All in all, on PlayStation 4 we generally see things even out around the mid 40s, meaning that there is some noticeable judder at times. It's not an ideal situation, but these are some of the biggest maps in the game, and yeah, the GPU is stressed often. Moving on to Xbox One, and gameplay set on the same map actually yields more positive results. It's worth bearing in mind though that this being a multiplayer game, we can't actually match up the footage like for like, so there are bound to be differences, but across a general run of play in the same areas, we actually see the Xbox One deliver a consistent lead. Scenes which play out at around 45 FPS on PlayStation 4 range from kind of 50 to 60 FPS on Xbox One. There are some drops down to the mid to low 40s, yes, but these occur less frequently than on Sony's console, and generally the experience does feel smoother. It's not a perfect 60 FPS lock, and this can definitely be felt, and indeed seen with some judder on screen, but it's definitely an improvement. That being said, there are some areas where even the Xbox One is pushed to the limit. In this instance, this particular environment covered in a thick veil of fog really taxes the GPU and memory bandwidth, and as a result we actually see frame rates drop down into the mid-30s. Now, we couldn't replicate the exact same scene on PlayStation 4, but given the Xbox One's performance advantage, then well, I'd imagine we'd see even lower drops on Sony's system in the same area. So that's both consoles covered, but what about PC? The Frostbite engine traditionally is very scalable, with the ability to ramp up various visual effects beyond that of console platforms, while also targeting 60 frames per second. We've already seen the game running maxed out at Ultra using a GTX 1060 and RX 480, where the game performed beautifully, but just how much of an upgrade are we getting over consoles? Well, from what we can see, it appears that the console versions are roughly running at the PC's medium preset. Now, when moving to Ultra on the PC, we see upgrades in a number of areas. Perhaps the most obviously striking difference is the increase in terrain quality. As you can see, there is a lot more detail in the form of debris and rubble scattered across the ground, and this kind of fills out the environment a lot more than on consoles. On top of that, draw distances are naturally fleshed out. Not only do we see more objects displayed far away from the camera, but also level of detail streaming is improved too, with less pop-up on objects that appear across all three versions at similar times. In terms of general asset quality, well, baseline texture detail appears the same as on console, though it's worth pointing out that there are higher resolution texture layers deployed on Ultra across certain parts of the environment that we just don't see on PS4 and Xbox One, which brings about slightly more refined detail across the scene. On top of that, effects work is also improved, so we see more liberal use of physics-based particles in addition to extra alpha effects and higher quality post-processing, so motion blur features less artifacts and depth of field is sometimes more subtle, a bit more refined. And yeah, on top of that we also get the usual suspects like high quality shadows. We also see an increase in foliage which sees more greenery deployed across the environment. Overall then, the PC version definitely delivers an upgraded graphical experience over consoles, and that's joined by the obvious ability to increase the resolution, so we can run at native 1080p or we can power past it and go full on at 4K, and that's an experience that's absolutely incredible to see. And what's more, the scalable nature of the Frostbite engine means hitting 60 frames per second isn't that difficult. Overall then, Battlefield 1 is an excellent game, and something of a return to form for the series, bringing back massively detailed environments, along with the class-leading destruction we saw in the Bad Company games. It's definitely a step up over previous games in the series, and the quality extends down to each of the three different versions available. Naturally, if you want the best experience possible, then it's obvious the PC version delivers just that, and you don't need ultra high-end hardware to do it either. Whereas in terms of consoles, we see PlayStation 4 take point with superior image quality, whereas on Xbox One, well, that version actually takes point with regards to performance, particularly in multiplayer, which delivers a smoother experience all round. In any case, Battlefield 1 is still a great game across all formats, and it's definitely worth checking out. Anyway, I think that about wraps it up. If you enjoyed our analysis, then don't forget to give us a thumbs up, and remember to subscribe if you'd like to support Digital Foundry. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.